Yeah, and then you should have a little booklet to follow along. So if anybody needs one, maybe I can have somebody hand those out. Not the other one, the information session booklet. Okay, thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Lynne Hermann. I am a volunteer with Dementia-Friends. I became involved in this work about a couple years ago because my mother lived with Alzheimer's for about 10 years and she passed 2 years ago. I'm not an expert in dementia. It's not my role to give specific advice about dementia, but I can tell you where you can find more and get the support that you need. I'm really excited to be here today at your church because faith communities play a very vital role in offering supportive and welcoming environments for people who are touched by dementia. So this session will last about 45 minutes or so. At the end of the session, you should be able to describe what dementia is, know the most common types of dementia. There's 5 key messages that I want you to leave with, and you'll also learn how to effectively communicate with somebody living with dementia. And towards the end of the session, I'm going to ask you to choose a small action that you can take as part of becoming a dementia friend today. So, Dementia-Friends is a global movement. It was developed by the Alzheimer's Society in the United Kingdom and is now underway in the United States. Minnesota was actually the first state to start offering these Dementia-Friends information sessions. And we currently have about 15,000 Dementia-Friends in the state of Minnesota. The goal is to help everyone in the community understand 5 key messages about dementia, how it affects people, and how we can each make a difference in the lives of people living with the disease. People with dementia need to be understood and supported in their communities, and we can help by being dementia friends. So if I asked you to give me one word that comes to mind when you hear the word dementia, what would you say?
Memory loss.
Memory loss?
Age.
Age?
Confusion.
Confusion. Anything else? Most of the words people come up with are those. Also, I hear fear, loss, and a lot of negative kind of words. Fear and loss are often mentioned, but by the end of this session, I want you to hopefully see not what people living with dementia have lost, but what they can still do, what they still have. So dementia is not a specific disease. It's actually an umbrella kind of term that describes a wide range of symptoms that are associated with a decline in memory and other thinking skills that are severe enough to interfere with everyday life. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia. It accounts for 60 to 80% of cases. Some other types of dementia you may have heard of is Lewy body dementia. I think Robin Williams had that. What's that? Frontal temporal dementia and vascular dementia are the most common types. The goal of Dementia-Friends is to increase understanding about dementia and also to help reduce stigma. So most people as they age, they experience some physical changes. We might need some cheaters, we might see a few gray hairs showing up, we might be a little bit stiffer in the morning. We also experience some cognitive changes as we age. We may find that we can't remember names as easily or that we have a little more trouble concentrating in busy settings, and I think, quite frankly, in our culture today, we have lots of distractions that can make it a little more difficult to concentrate on things. But we're going to talk about changes that are not normal and that may be signs or symptoms of something significant. So there's 10 early signs and symptoms of dementia. The first sign is memory loss, and if you're following along in your book, it's on the first page there. The first sign is memory loss that disrupts daily life. This is one of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially forgetting recently learned information. People might forget important dates or events. They may ask for the same information over and over again or tell the same story over within the same conversation. I noticed this with my mom when I talked to her on the phone, that she would tell me something and 5 minutes later she'd tell me the exact same thing as if she had not mentioned it. And I know sometimes when I call my kids, I can't remember which kid I've told what, but usually once I've told them in the conversation, I don't repeat it. You'll also see them relying more on memory aids or having family members remember. And I could remember my dad kind of covering for my mom where if she couldn't remember something, she'd just look at him and he would automatically fill it in. And it took a while for us to pick up that he was actually covering with her, and he didn't even realize he was doing it. The second sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. So some people may have trouble developing and following a plan. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe or keeping track of monthly bills. With normal aging, we can make errors occasionally with our checkbook, but we usually figure it out. The third, and if you've always had trouble figuring out your checkbook, and this is something where that's a change. So someone who's always really good with numbers suddenly isn't. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure. People with Alzheimer's or dementia often find it hard to complete daily tasks. They may have trouble driving to a familiar location, managing a budget at work, or remembering the rules to a favorite game. What's typical with normal aging is occasionally needing help with the microwave settings, or for me it's the television remote, because we have 3 of them. Never figure out which goes for what. The fourth sign is confusion with time or place. People with Alzheimer's can lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding something that's happening in the future or in the past. So you want to be talking about the present and really be present with someone with dementia. 5 minutes can seem like 5 hours to them. My dad would leave to go to run an errand, tell her she'd be back in half an hour, and 10 minutes later she was calling him to find out where he was. It's all right, it's normal to get confused about the day of the week, but usually we recall it later. The fifth sign is trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So for some people, having vision problems can be one of the first signs. They may have trouble reading, judging distance, and determining color or contrast. So if there's a dark rug on a white floor, it might look like a hole in the floor, and they'll walk around it. If there's white food on a white plate, they may not necessarily be able to detect that it's there. With my mom, when we would go to a restaurant, she'd open the menu and she knew that that's what everybody was doing, but she couldn't interpret what the words were saying. So she'd say, well, I don't see this. And then we'd say, oh yeah, it's right here. They have your favorite. And so that was another kind of sign that we didn't quite pick up on right away. The other thing is in driving, as they're backing in and out of the garage, you may start clipping the side mirror. Again, if you've always had trouble with the garage or parking, it's something that's a change, or trouble staying in the lane, judging distances between cars. With normal aging, we might have visual changes such as cataracts, and again, needing the cheaters. The sixth sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. People with Alzheimer's have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of a conversation and have no idea how to continue. And again, they may repeat themselves. They also can struggle with vocabulary and have trouble finding a right word. So a clock or a watch could become a hand clock. Or, that stuff over there. They can't name the stuff, but it's over there. With normal aging, we might have trouble finding the right word, but usually it will come to us as soon as you start having trouble finding a name or a word, you're stressed. And when you're stressed, your brain doesn't function properly, and it does affect your memory. But as soon as you're relaxed and you're doing something else, it comes to you. So that's normal aging. The seventh sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So a person with Alzheimer's disease may put things in unusual places. They may lose things and be unable to go back over their steps to find them again, and sometimes they may even accuse others of stealing. With my mom, we would find things in various drawers that didn't belong where they did. She was always misplacing her purse and always thought someone had stolen it, even though it was either right where she had left it or she had put it in a place that we weren't looking for it. With normal aging, again, we might misplace our keys or our cell phone, but usually we can find it. The 8th sign is decreased or poor judgment. People with Alzheimer's may experience changes in judgment or decision making. So when it comes to financial things, they may not make good decisions. Telemarketers can often convince them to give them money. They also may pay less attention to grooming and keeping themselves clean. My mom wanted to wear the same outfit every day as she progressed through the disease. And also there can be a loss of that filter where we know sometimes we think things and we don't say them, but people with dementia sometimes will say whatever they're thinking. And with my mom, she was always very polite and politically correct, but things would come out of her mouth and we'd be a little surprised. With normal aging, we might make a bad decision once in a while, but usually it doesn't have those types of financial consequences. The 9th sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. Again, people with Alzheimer's may start to remove themselves from hobbies or social activities, sporting events, or projects they used to work on, just because they can't keep up with it. And they avoid being social because of the changes that they've experienced, and they don't want to be embarrassed about the changes. So with normal aging, sometimes we just feel a little weary about work and social activities when we might decide to stay home, but usually it's not something that we're doing for long periods of time. And the 10th sign is a change in mood and personality, especially in the evening. You may have heard the term sundowning, where people with dementia tend to get more confused and anxious later in the day. They also might any places that are out of their comfort zone, so new environments can also create some anxiety and confusion, which will show up as changes in personality. With normal aging, again, we kind of have specific ways that we like to do things, and we might get a little irritated if somebody tries to change our routine. But usually those are temporary mood swings. All right, on the next page, you'll see 2 columns, and we're going to do a little matching of the 2 columns. So this, again, will help you understand dementia and learn the 5 key messages. So the first one is dementia is not. What do you think the answer is? E, a normal part of aging. This is the first key message. Although dementia is more common in people over age 65, about 1 in 6 or 7 people will have some dementia. Over age 85, it's 1 in 3. But not everyone who grows old will develop dementia. It's important to ask a doctor to check out any unusual symptoms. So when I go through that list of 10 signs and symptoms, people say, well, either I have a couple of those or I know someone who has a couple of those. And people will ask me, so do I have dementia? Not necessarily. They're just warning signs. There are lots of things that can cause memory issues, visual problems, thinking issues, stress being one of the biggest ones, but medications, infections. So it's important to see a physician or a healthcare provider if you are experiencing any of these, because many of them can be treatable. Number 2, dementia is caused by A, diseases of the brain. So the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's is dementia is that umbrella term. Alzheimer's is one of the causes of dementia and the most common cause. It changes the chemistry and structure of the brain, and it causes brain cells to die off. All right, number 3, dementia is not just D, about having memory problems. This is the 3rd key message. People often think that dementia is a form of memory loss, and again, although memory loss is one of the first signs, there is much more to it. It can affect the way people think, the way they speak, and the way they do things. Dementia makes it harder to plan and learn new activities and can interfere with structured tasks like writing. It can also make it harder to communicate. But there's much that can be done, and every year we're learning more. We're very fortunate to have the Mayo Clinic here in Rochester, and they have one of the biggest studies going on with regards to aging and with Alzheimer's research. Pardon me? The aging study. Yeah, I'm part of that aging study. And it's very fascinating to me, all the different things that even as I've been in the study for a couple of years now, each year they have new things that they've added with the functional MRIs, and it's very interesting. But But there's lots of strategies that we can come up with to help boost someone's confidence and to maintain their independence for as long as possible. Number 4, it's possible to have C, good quality of life with dementia. This is our 4th key message. Most of us have an image in our mind of what dementia looks like, and that image is often very bleak. So it can be very surprising to learn that many people who are living with dementia are working at their jobs and socializing and continue to drive. As their dementia progresses, they can lead active, healthy lives and continue hobbies and especially enjoy friendships and relationships. My mom, she lived my dad took care of her at home for 7 years, and the last couple of years she was in a long-term care facility, but for those first 7 years, one of her favorite things to do was to go out and have lunch with friends or sit out on the patio and watch the golfers come by and have the neighbors over. So they can still enjoy lots of things and get the very best out of life. Number 5, there's more to the person than B, the dementia. In the same way we look at anybody who had diabetes or cancer, we see them as a person first, and people living with dementia are also people first. Okay, I'm ready for I have a short video to show you that the State Act on Alzheimer's group put together to kind of reinforce these 5 key messages, and it's very good. Okay. Well, he's getting that set up. Oh, here we go.
I found myself saying something or trying to say something and then I realized that the word didn't even fit in that I said or something like that. So I just kept, thinking about it, and it didn't happen every day. It didn't happen, hardly at all. And then it just kept getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse.
I think some of the family members thought something was off, I guess. Did any of them think dementia? Probably not.
When you're used to doing things and doing it right and doing it, and and all of a sudden, you can't remember this, and you can't, what is your name, and it's like a dark area. It's just like being in darkness,
And I think everybody that with this disease, people walk away from them. They're afraid they're going to catch it, like measles or mumps. And that bothers me that they do that.
I have to be aware that any moment my brain might not tell me where to go.
My first reaction was that we beat this disease.
I can't spell anything like I used to be able to just spell, you just write a check. Now I'm not clear what the thing is, how you do it or anything. All that stuff that I thought I was so good at is gone, or on the way gone.
Remembering names, I think that's the biggest issue with me.
People sometimes would kind of look at you kind of strange, because I'm not saying what they want me to say or talk the way they want me to talk.
When I started putting my shirts on backwards, that was one of my early signs too.
Walking, that's why I have a cane now, and because I have a tendency to rock sideways, and I don't want to trip or fall.
Darkness is not good for me, and I tend to trip or fall, and my coordination isn't as it used to be.
Oh, I don't cook anymore either, because when I cook, and it doesn't matter if someone's in the house or not, I just start cooking and I forget about using, what do you use when you cook? What? The stove. I forget every time to turn it off. Every time I've cooked, no matter who's there.
Right now, like I'm doing really good because I have someone that takes care of me really good, you know.
Be active in the community still. Go to yoga, do things like that. Don't do it so well, but that's okay.
Staying active, even a little bit active, keeps you interested.
And I like to be around people.
When people would struggle, I'd go over and help them. And I found it very uplifting to help other people.
You know, you can't deny this disease. If you deny it, you're going to get in trouble.
And singing is very, very good to the brain. We know that. And the more we can do that, the better off we'll be.
People that have dementia, I think, are very unique. And I think they have a lot to offer still.
It's an attitude here. You have to get up in the morning and say, okay, I got to do this today. Even if it's just one thing.
I can say to a person that it's going to be all right. And I can say to a person that depend on God. Because with God, everything is possible.
I'm not ashamed of it. And nobody should be. I mean, I had cancer. Was I ashamed of having cancer? No. Why would I be? You know? Why should I be ashamed of having dementia?
I've lasted 14 years with this disease. It's not going to go away. I accept that. Only thing I guess with my future is that I'll work as hard as I can to stay alive and function.
So a very powerful video. This is on YouTube, so if you want to share this with anybody, you just look Dementia-Friends 5 Key Messages on the YouTube search and you can find it there. All right. The brain has many different areas and each one's responsible for different functions. For example, memory, judgment, and movement. And when cells in an area of the brain are damaged, that area can't function as effectively. So there's a story in your booklet there about a 70-year-old woman who has dementia. And if you imagine there's a bookcase next to her, and each of the books on the shelves represent her memories of facts, her skills for thinking in complex ways, and those are near the top of the shelf. Lower on the shelf, you'll see that our memories from further back and emotions and feelings are stored down there. So when dementia rocks this woman's bookcase, the books that are on the top shelves fall off first. So her ability to remember what she ate for breakfast, or that she has to pay for items at the drugstore, or that someone came to visit her this morning are there. But again, emotions and feelings are lower, so feelings like love, happiness, frustration, and sensing respect reside here. As dementia continues to rock, the books on the lower shelf stays for a much longer time. So for an example, if the 70-year-old woman had a daughter that came to visit and she couldn't remember her daughter's name, and I did experience that for the last 4 years of my mom's life, she did not know my name. But whenever I would spend time with her, she still remembered, we'd have a good visit, she remembered the feelings of love, comfort, and before I would leave, she would say, I'm so glad to see you today. But if the daughter comes in and gets hurt or mad at the mom for not remembering your name, and get into an argument and say, what do you mean you don't remember my name? I'm your daughter, I'm, 50-something, and, I've been around for a long time. She won't remember what the argument was about, but when I leave, she'll remember those feelings of kind of frustration and maybe even a little resentment, and might not want to see me for a while. So again, dementia affects different parts of the brain, but the parts that feel emotion and any memory that's stored with an emotion is stored a little differently. And so that's why you can usually remember more things that were, had happy memories or even bad memories if there was a lot of emotion attached to it rather than what you had for breakfast yesterday or today. So that's just kind of a little example of how dementia affects the brain. So some of the other things besides memory, judgment is a skill that we use to keep ourselves safe or interact with others. Planning is a skill that we use to carry out our everyday activities. A person with dementia may not be able to remember how to make cookies the way they used to, or may have trouble mowing the lawn. But everyday tasks can become more challenging. So for an example, if I were to ask you to write down all the steps that it takes to brush your teeth, what would be the first step? Pick up the toothbrush, okay? My first step would be remembering that I have to brush my teeth, finding the bathroom, turning the light on, finding my toothbrush, okay, and then what comes next? Okay, put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. So again, you can break that down even further to find the tube that's actually toothpaste and not hand cream or hemorrhoid cream or something else. And then to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, what do you have to do? Open the cap, put some toothpaste on there, put that back down. So, we think it's just a simple task because we do it without even thinking about it. But with people with dementia, they can get stuck on any of those steps. So in early stages, it might be just a little reminder, brush your teeth before you go to bed, or first thing in the morning. As the disease progresses, it might be making sure that they know which toothbrush is there and maybe put the toothpaste right next to it instead of buried in a drawer with 5 other tubes. With my mom, as she progressed, and when she was living in long-term care, we had to prompt her a little bit more where sometimes all I had to do was put the toothpaste on the toothbrush for her, and as soon as she got it in her hand, that automatic memory, that procedural memory, which is not affected as much by Alzheimer's, she automatically would put it in her mouth and start brushing her teeth. Further along, I would have to actually kind of show her what to do, and she would mirror me, because those mirror neurons in the brain will we just kind of automatically do what the other person's doing. Same thing with facial expressions. If we have a smile on our face, they'll tend to smile. And eventually she got to the point where we had to help her do it, but this progressed over 10 years. So, there's steps along the way where you can sort, but it's important to kind of identify as which step are they getting stuck on. And there's lots of tasks that we do every day that we don't think about. Making lunch, going to the grocery store, driving the car. All those types of things are just in that procedural memory that we don't think about. So if you think about the tasks that you're doing every day, I actually tried to break this down into all the steps. What else does your brain do while you're doing these activities? Thinks about other things. It's reminding you to breathe. It's telling your heart to beat. It's telling your muscles to move. It's telling your arm to pick up the toothbrush. So the brain controls everything. And everyday tasks have more steps than we actually know about. So people with dementia may find everyday tasks more difficult, but with support it's possible for them to, again, continue to perform everyday tasks. Nothing's more frustrating to a person with dementia than us doing things for them, especially early on. We assume they can't do it. Assume they can, just help them as they need it. Communication is the ability to exchange ideas, wishes, and feelings is another very basic need that we all have. But communication with a person with dementia requires patience, understanding, and good listening skills. When we talked about the bookcase story, we talked about how a person might feel as the changes of dementia continue to affect thinking. So one of the things that can be affected is our ability to communicate, both expressing needs and also understanding what others are asking. So as we talk about communication, I want you to think about how the other person might feel. People with Alzheimer's will often use familiar words repeatedly. They might invent some new words to describe objects. They easily lose their train of thought. They may revert to a birth language, and on where my mother stayed, there was a lady who grew up speaking Polish, and so when she got dementia, that's all she would speak was Polish. She could still understand English, but she would never respond in English. They may also have difficulty organizing words logically, so further along in the disease, the sentences can get a little jumbled. But ongoing communication is important no matter how difficult it can become or how confused the person may appear. They might not respond with what you're saying or asking. They may push you away. So trying to help a person get dressed and put their shirt on, they may not be able to tell you that it hurts to put their arm up over their head, and they may push you away instead. If there's, we call these responses behaviors, but they're actually normal responses. If my arm hurt and you tried to put my arm into something that wasn't comfortable, I'd probably do the same thing. But it's just a form of communication. The person, if the room is very noisy or there's lots of activity going on and they're not at home, they may get overwhelmed and a little anxious, and the response may be crying instead of saying, I'm really overwhelmed and anxious. The only way they can really communicate that is to cry. Or if things are moving too fast, they might not be able to tell you to slow down. So when there is a behavior, it's always good to try to figure out what's prompting this. Are they, uncomfortable? Usually it's when they don't feel safe or they don't feel respected. Those two things. So when we're communicating with someone with dementia, it's important to treat them with dignity and respect. Avoid talking past the person if he or she, as if they weren't there. So if you're meeting, like people would, sometimes, my dad would do this even sometimes. I'd come and show up, and he'd start telling me about their day as if she wasn't there, and she's listening saying, well, I don't remember that. So it was always important, I thought, for him to include her in the conversation, or don't tell her story, tell his story. To be aware of your feelings, tone of voice and body language can communicate a lot more. So you want to be sure that you're positive and friendly, use friendly facial expressions. My mom could always tell when my dad was stressed out about something. So he might be saying the right words and trying to be nice about it, but she could always tell from his tone of voice if he was angry or upset. And that never really went away. She was the same way with caregivers that would come in. The ones that were just doing a job, she reacted much differently to than the ones who actually cared about the job they were doing. You want to be patient and supportive. Let them know that you're listening and trying to understand. Be careful not to interrupt them if they are struggling a little bit to find their place in the conversation. People with dementia may have difficulty communicating if we talk too quickly, and I know I talk really fast. It may take them 20 seconds to understand, for their brain to hear the message and then actually process it to understand what you're saying. And 20 seconds is a very long time. That was only about 10 seconds, and that felt uncomfortably long. Yeah. So just remember if you're having a conversation with someone with dementia, to take your time, give them a chance to process it. I'll never forget the week my mother died. She was not communicating very much, and my dad had the old-fashioned ring on his cell phone, like the old kind of ring that you had on the phone on the wall. And his phone went off and he left the room, and I am not kidding you. About 20 seconds later, she said, "Hello, Joan Bergner." And I was just floored, but the thing is, as a young person, she was a secretary. Huh. And that's exactly how she would answer a phone that rang like that. And I was just blown away that memory the memories are still there. It just sometimes it takes the right trigger. So it was the sound of the phone that triggered it. So I've seen it. All right. If someone's having trouble communicating, again, offer comfort, reassurance. Avoid criticizing or correcting. Don't tell the person that what they're saying is incorrect. And this was something that is also, it's a hard habit to break, to correct people. If they've repeated themselves, don't tell them that they've repeated themselves, because then my mom would say, oh, I'm stupid, or if she couldn't come up with something, or if you told her she was wrong. So if the sky's purple, the sky's purple. Unless it's a safety issue. Whatever they're saying, just go with it. You know, she would start telling me stories that I knew were not, but it was a story to her, and it made her happy to tell it. So I always let her tell whatever story she wanted to tell. My dad would, tell her we were going to go to the dentist on Wednesday. And so Monday he'd start saying, well, Wednesday we're going to the dentist. When are we going to the dentist? On Wednesday we're going to the dentist. Wednesday would come and he'd say, okay, it's time to go to the dentist. You didn't tell me we were going to the dentist. And he said, I'm sorry, I forgot, but it's time to go. And so that completely avoided the argument. If they can't come up with a word and they've tried a little bit, you can offer a guess if you kind of know, but sometimes finding the right word isn't even necessary. And you want to encourage nonverbal communication. So if they're having trouble expressing themselves, instead of say, tell me, show me. So show me what you want me to do, or show me what you're upset about, or show me. When approaching a person with dementia to start a conversation, you want to approach them from the front rather than the side. Their peripheral vision can be impaired somewhat. You want to get down at their level, so you don't want to stand over them because that can feel very threatening. Use short, simple phrases. Repeat information if you need to. Don't over-explain. Keep it simple. Because the more you explain, the more lost they get in the conversation. So you want to keep it simple. Patiently wait for a response. Sometimes you want to provide a statement rather than a question, because when there's a question, then sometimes there's a right or wrong answer, and that can be very anxiety-producing. So instead of saying, do you need to use the bathroom, or are you hungry? The bathroom is right here, or lunch is ready, let's see what they made. Again, be specific when you're naming an object, rather than say, could you put that over there? And say, put the cup in the sink. Give a lot of visual cues. You want to point or touch the item that you want them to use. Avoid quizzing with reminiscing. So now, you don't want to say, do you remember? But you can say, I remember. And if they remember, they might join in. But you want to share your memories, don't test their memories. Someone told me one time, it's like when you ask someone, do you remember, they open that photo album in their book and look for that picture of that memory. And if they can't find it, then that becomes very scary and frustrating. So you don't want to prompt that feeling. Sometimes we would use written notes or pictures as reminders. If I wanted my mom to do something and she was resistant, I would always say, can you help me? Because helping someone is a very basic need that we also have, having a purpose. I would ask a lot of open-ended questions, so there wasn't a right or wrong answer. So what do you think about this? Or how did that make you feel? Or, it's a lovely day. Talk about the present, again, instead of the past or the future. Call the person by their preferred name to get their attention. Again, my mom did not know who I was. So I never came in and said, hi Mom, how are you doing today? It was always, hi Joan, it's Lynne, I'm so glad to see you. But you don't want to come up, do you remember me, or do you know who I am? And then of course somebody from the staff would come over and say, oh, your daughter's here. And she'd look like, I don't have a daughter this old. She always thought she had babies, so she was wondering where the kids were all the time. All right, so we just have a few minutes left. Again, the 5 key messages that I shared with you today. What was the first one?
I can't remember.
Dementia is not a normal part of aging. It's a disease of the brain. It's not just about memory loss. That it's possible to live a good life with dementia. And there's more to the person than the dementia. All right, so what I'd like you to do today is take what you've learned and put it into action. So what does dementia-friendly mean to you?
Respect.
Respect, yeah. And the thing is a lot of these tips are for people with dementia, but I think they're just good tips in general. I know every time I go in Hy-Vee, if I even look like I'm looking for something, I don't have dementia, but they'll come and say, can I help you find something? And I would say they're very helpful. I wanted to share some of the things that people say when I ask them, what action will you do? I'll stay in touch with someone I know living with dementia. I'll change the way I talk about dementia. Instead of suffering with dementia, they're not suffering, we're suffering. They're living with dementia. So I always say, my mother lived with dementia. Smile and say hello instead of avoiding people with dementia. Again, even if you don't know what to say, there's nothing you just need to have, just be nice to them and have a conversation. But it's more than just being nice. It's really including them and making them feel valued and respected. Again, church is a great place where, a lot of people find, because that's, again, something familiar from when they were growing up. My mom, even to the very end, the priest came to talk to them and said the prayer, and all the words came out. Even though, again, we had not been having much conversation, she knew the Our Father. If they were singing hymns, even hymns I didn't know because they were from way back, she knew all the words, and I thought, well, where did she learn that song? And apparently it's from years before. No action is too big or too small. Every action will make a difference. Even if it's just having a conversation with other people about what you learned today, that can be helpful because, again, we're trying to educate people to reduce that stigma. Most people don't realize that 70% of the people with dementia are living in the community. They are not in long-term care waiting to die. So they're in your community, they're in church, they're at work, they're in the grocery store. Locally, there's a group that I started with called Act on Alzheimer's. They got together about 5 years ago to survey the community, see what the community wanted. One was more information, and that's why we offer these Dementia-Friends information sessions. So if you have another group that is looking for a speaker and you found this interesting, I'd be happy to present this, or with work employees. I think it would be great if restaurant servers understood that people with dementia are coming to their restaurant, how they can be more patient and communicate with people. Any place of business could use this information. We've also started a few initiatives because people living with dementia said they wanted more social opportunities. I host a memory cafe at Dunn Brothers. And that's held the second Tuesday of the month at 1:30 at Dunn Brothers North, and I have flyers on that. We also started a choir called Resounding Voices, and I volunteer with that group. They are a wonderful group of people. They have so much fun, and you noticed in that video the gentleman talked about singing. He's part of a choir up in the cities called Giving Voice, and another thing to Google is Giving Voice and to watch what they've done. Their choir is huge. They have over 100 people, and it's made up of people with dementia and their care partners or a friend that get together once a week to rehearse songs, and then they put on a concert. So with our group, we rehearse 10 weeks, we put on a conference. Our concert is June 1st, which is a Saturday morning at Calvary Free Evangelical Church, which is up on North 55th Street. It's $10 to attend, but my experience in working with these people is, when we first started, they were a little shy and weren't sure they wanted to do this. And some people say, well, I'm not sure this is going to work. And we said, come and try it once. And one lady asked, after the first time, said, okay, go ahead and sign us up. We're doing this. And I've seen people who are pretty far along in their dementia, but they look forward to this every week. And one gentleman said that he noticed that the days of rehearsal, she would be a little more upbeat throughout the day because she had this great time in the morning. Again, those feeling good things stay with you. But that she'd be humming through the day, the songs, and they'd have a CD that they could practice the songs during the week, so they'd have it in the car or at home. And she would always light up, and it's just amazing to see the change in her mood. And then I brought some other resources. One of the other things that the ACT group did, we got a grant and created that book, Living, it's the community booklet, yes, which is very good. And then Mayo Clinic has put together a book with some local resources. I also facilitate a caregiver support group, so if you know somebody who's caring for someone with dementia, even if it's long distance, it's twice a month, and it's I volunteer through the Alzheimer's Association for that. If you need to reach me, I'm volunteer with Elder Network, and they're they've taken on Dementia-Friends as one of their projects. So Elder Network's number is in that book. There's also, if caregivers don't want a group thing, you can get one-on-one kind of support through a program called REACH, which is offered through Elder Network and the Area Agency on Aging. So, I'm sorry I spoke so fast, but I tried to get a lot of information in a short period of time. Does anybody have any questions?
I think you said most people with dementia know they have it?
No.
Oh, they don't?
No, probably about half know that they have it.
And do the others, are they in denial or simply ignorant?
No, their brain just can't process that. Sometimes I think it's a kind of a self-preservation mechanism. The question was, do most people know that they have dementia? And I think a lot of people are in denial, and that's their kind of, they don't. But what I've heard is that 50% of people that have dementia don't understand that that's what's going on. Another, probably about 30% know that it's going on, but they try to hide it. And then 20% know, but, and then I have some people that come to my memory cafe that are very open about it. And memory cafe is more of a social, it's not a support group, it's more of a social outing. So we don't talk about dementia and the problems with that. We talk about what's going on in our life, and we just have fun, and it's a nice conversation. And again, some of the people that come are a little further along with their dementia, but they just seem to enjoy listening to everybody else talk and have a cup of coffee and a cookie. So.
That does remind me, how do you start a conversation with someone who has dementia?
Well, again, it depends. Sometimes you have to carry on the conversation and let them jump in where they want to. So I have no problem talking. So I just talk about what's going on in my day. I was planning a wedding for both my daughters while my mom was experiencing, and if I didn't have anything to talk about, I just tell her the same story, because she loved hearing about that. She loved to plan parties, so she loved hearing about all the things we were planning. Or I would tell her what I was doing that day. Or so it's just kind of having a conversation. But sometimes, again, early on they can still have conversation, but if people are avoiding them because they can't stay with the conversation, that makes it a little more challenging for them. So being patient, and if they say the same story again, that's okay too.
Okay, I think we're going to have to break.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
You're welcome. And I have information up here if anybody wants more information about and I'll leave some of this with you. Just because I don't know if you have a place where you.
That was good. Very good.
There's always something.